Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Micah Let's Plays, and guess who I am? I'm Micah, cause who else would I be? Guys, I'm so excited. We're gonna be talking about Fable 4, the rumors, the leaks, and all of that goodness. But before I jump into all that juiciness, I made an intro just for you. Enjoy! Wink!
Now loading Micah's Let's Play.
And so, our adventure begins. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before I jump into any of this content, massive caveat. I have never played Fable before in my life. Let that simmer for a second. Now, I know a lot of you might be like, well, Micah, why the hell are you excited about a franchise you never played before? Well, shut up. Well, actually, it's because I've always been a fan of the franchise. I've never played the franchise. I've seen all of the Let's Plays. I watch, his channel is called Mah Dry Bread. I have a link to his video description, and also the Gray-Haired Gamer link in his video, with his video description as well. So, I've seen the game. I like it. I just never played it. Now, here's why. Before I had my YouTube channel, many eons ago, before I got married, me and my brother Mattyson Dreamland, his icon right here, me and my brother Matthew used to share gaming consoles. We shared our Sega Genesis, our Sega Saturn, our first Dreamcast, we shared our GameCube, we shared a PlayStation, we shared the Xbox One. But lo and behold, I got married, and when I moved out of the house, I didn't take any of the games with me. Technically, most of the game consoles technically belong to my brother, and we just had an agreement that I had much as rights to it as he did, but I didn't take any gaming consoles with me. And during the first 10 years of my marriage, I never owned a video game. Not one. Not a console. Nothing. And the only times I would ever play video games is when I would hang out with my brother Matthew or my best friend Corey, as seen right here. So, during that time, I never owned a console or a game. So earlier this year is the year I decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and get back into gaming. Perfect time, right? I'm spending a lot of time at home. So, now that that disclaimer has been moved off the table, now let's jump into this content. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the Fable universe. I'm going to talk about the first 3 games, and then we're going to dive into the dense, delicious, juicy information we got with those leaks on Fable. So, let's be like Tinkerbell, and let's make the history of Fable begin. Okay, so the history of Fable is basically more of like the history of Albion. So in order to understand the history of Fable, you have to understand that there's a lot of history with it. It spans back like over 1,000 years, and it basically says once there was the Void, and out of the Void came the Knight of Blades, the Jack of Blades, and the Queen of Blades. And they basically said to the citizens of Albion, hey, let us rule you. And the citizens of Albion said in their most diplomatic way possible, no. So, they decided to burn the land. I mean, they went sacrificial burning on Albion. Then they said, alright, well, let us try this again. That's what the court said. That's the other name they called themselves, and said, hey, Albion, let us rule you. And the people said, as they were dusting off after being crispy critters, and said, no. And then they said, they're going to go Noah Ark style, and they are going to flood the lands. So, after the citizens of Albion were swimming with the fishes, literally, they came back and said, hey, let us rule you. And again, the citizens said, in the most aquatic and beautiful mermaid voices they could say, no. Here's what happened this time. The court said, bump this noise, we're going to make everybody go crazy, and let's see what happens next. So long story short, everybody was killing everybody in Albion. That's just the long and short of it. Then they came back and said, yo, Albion, let us rule, yeah? At this point, people were just like, ugh, whatever, just get on with it, because the sooner you're done, the sooner I can just go back to my life. So that's what happened. And it happened for a long time. Like, it's been so long, like, people don't even know. It's just been going on. So, a long story short, a blacksmith and his wife have a son, which is basically the most important character in the franchise, though he has been missing for several years, but we'll jump on him later. William Black is born. William Black is born, discovers he has powers of the mind, basically discovering he had willpower. Oh, I love it so much. Puns. They used to be the height of comedy back in the day, and considered very highbrow if you could make one. But this is just not one of those puns. But anywho, he discovered he had these powers, and then he was like, wait, maybe I can use these powers to, fight the court and free Albion. So he started reading this ancient tome. He gets sucked into the book, and lo and behold, he runs into the Jack of Blade. Jack of Blade said, I'm gonna take you out. And he said, not on a date, and he basically uses his powers to fight off the Jack of Blades and steals his sword called the Sword of Aeons. Now, the Sword of Aeons said, yo, William, if you bind yourself to me, mind, body, and soul, unsexy style, I'll help you defeat the court. He agrees. He does. He goes to the highest peak of Albion and says, yo, court, guess what? Calling you out, bitches. Let's do this. So the first one comes out is the Knight of Blades, and he makes short work of him in a matter of minutes. Then the Jack of Blades emerges, and he fights him, and this one lasts a little bit longer, but he squashes him. He destroys Jack of Blades' body, and Jack of Blades runs back into the void, basically never seen again. Then the Queen of Blades shows up, and she said, bitch, please, I'm running this show. That fight literally lasts for weeks, and I quote, mountains were raised and valleys were created just from the sheer blows at them throwing at one another. Eventually, he takes the queen out. From there, the people of Albion are like, holla freaking Luya, thank you for getting rid of that court, people. We're gonna make you our new king. And he says, I like Archon better. So that's what he becomes. Basically, from there, he has a bunch of kids. His kids are basically a bunch of spoiled brats, and they're terrorizing the people of Albion. He would have stepped in, but because he went into the void, he had this sickness in his body. He went back to the void, and he expelled it from his body, basically creating the crawler and the corruption. And we'll talk about that later. He leaves the void, and basically he just sees his kingdom going into chaos, so he puts on a blue robe, chainmail, and says, peace out, I'm out of here. Long story short, the citizens of Albion go into chaos, more chaos ensues, a whole bunch of craziness happens. Then this guy called Nostro appears, and he basically says, I'm gonna take Albion and make it great again. Doesn't that sound familiar? Long story short, this mysterious man named Scythe appears, wrapped in a blue robe that looks all dirty and this tarnished gold chainmail, who's totally not William Black, calling himself Scythe, and he has a sword that is whispering. I don't know. Anywho's, so basically, he says, Nostro, I see something in you that you don't see in yourself. Basically, he saw he had willpower, and says, hey, I'll teach you how to be a great leader. He does. Nostro ends up getting married to this woman. This woman corrupts him. He makes this huge arena that was once great, then becomes corrupted. Then, Nostro, he discovers that, oh my god, I did all these things, and for what? Like, for what? And he ends up getting poisoned because basically Nostro is abandoned at this point. Everyone left him, including that wife. And he's like, well, what have I done with my life? He calls Scythe up and he says, can you be with me while I croak out? And Scythe says, yeah, sure, I ain't got nothing else better to do. So he does. And then basically Nostro is like a character who's a ghost that just haunts Albion, watching the world change around him, which is really sad to think about it. And that's basically the backstory to the history of Albion as a whole. Now, normally you can go into the original website called Lionhead, where the original game makers of this franchise, but they're basically out of business. So if you go to the website, it's basically not there anymore. So I had to go into Wikipedia to find all this information, and Lord knows I did some looking. Luckily, there's also YouTube channels like Faust from It's Super Effective, his image right here, and I'll put a link to his video description in here as well. It's gonna be a lot of video links in here. Oh well, that's just a part of being a YouTuber, I guess. Now, From there, now we're going to talk about the first 3 games, kind of like the history of the first 3 games, and then we're going to talk about the delicious information we got with Fable 4. Hey, how you doing? Let's talk about Fable. Wink. Okay, so let's talk about Fable 1, 2, and 3. Basically, in the first Fable game, you are the hero of Oakvale, where you come from. Long story short, when the hero, which is a boy in this version, was a little kid, his entire village gets ransacked, his father dies, his mother, who used to be a hero herself, gets kidnapped, his little sister, on her birthday, gets kidnapped and gets turned blind, becomes a blind seer, he goes through this whole adventure, the Jack of Blades is there, trying to reclaim Albion and all this other stuff. And and fun fact, back in the history, and I forgot to mention this, there was a king that created the Spire. Spire gets destroyed, and we'll talk about that when we get to Fable 2. The hero of Oakvale kills the Jack of Blades, and depending on how you end the game, you can wear the mask, you can not wear the mask, so it just depends how you end the game. Long story short. With that happen, over 500 years happens in between. Somehow, Teresa, your sister, is still alive through all this time. And might I just add, homegirl doesn't look a day over 40. You go, Teresa. I'm scared of you. I want to know what your secrets are, honey. Like, for real, for real. Micah's getting old. I need some tips. Anywho, so now you got to Fable 2, and in Fable 2, now you're playing the new hero of Bowerstone. And in this version, now you can be a boy or a girl, depending on how you want to see the story. Well, here's what happens. You and your sister are homeless beggars on the street. You run into Teresa, and Teresa's basically like, hey, it's sad when kids don't believe in magic. You find this little magic box. You make a wish to be in the castle. You go to the castle because the guy named Lucian discovers that you guys maybe have willpower or whatever, because basically you're descendants of the hero of Oakvale. So you do. You go to his castle, he realizes you're some kind of prophecy, he kills your sister, he kills you, and Teresa says, you won't die today, little sparrow. And she snatches you away, taking you off to her caravan of gypsies, where she basically tells you, hey, you gotta go kill this guy Lucian, he's rebuilding this spire, and he's doing it all bad style. You do, you find these other heroes along the way, you find Hannah, or Hannah, who's the hero of strength, also goes by Hammer. Then you find the other guy, who's the hero of will. He has these really cool tattoos. And then my personal favorite, Reaver, who's the hero of skill, who's basically a flamboyant bad guy, and I love him for it because he's completely corrupt. And if you played Fable 2 and you run into him, you know what I'm talking about. He is utterly awesome. Now, after you beat the game and you take out Lucian, Teresa comes to you with her hands all like this, all demure, and she basically offers you an opportunity using the Spire, because the Spire is basically designed to channel all the willpower in the world, and it will grant someone one wish. And Teresa offers you, the hero of Bowerstone, this wish, and you can choose to sacrifice yourself, you can choose love to bring back your fallen loved ones, or you can choose fame and fortune because, you know, you want money. And just if I didn't mention this, in the history, in these games, you can choose to be good or bad, and I'm kind of usually somewhere in between, but I might choose to be more benevolent, I don't know. Anywho, you make your wish, and it comes true, da da da. Now, what ends up happening is that Teresa wants you to become the new ruler of Albion, and you do, because her wish comes true. So now, when you become the new ruler of Albion, you end up having children. Long story short, you kick the bucket, and you end up having 2 kids. Your first child becomes a tyrant king, and your other child, again, depending on how you want to play the game, as male or female, you end up going on this whirlwind adventure. You run away from the palace with your friend slash father figure named Walter, and your butler named Jasper, and your cute dog, which you also have a dog in Fable 2, not in Fable 1, but you know, you have your dog and you run, and then basically you are the hero of Brightwall, and you have to basically come into this, you know, into this new revolution because the industrial age happens and guns are around and all this other stuff, and people don't believe in heroes anymore. It's a whole thing. you basically save the day. You end up fighting the darkness from the corruptor. Basically, remember that thing that William Black purged from his body? Well, guess what? That bitch was sentient, came back and said, I'm killing everybody. And Teresa saw it and basically told the first king. The first king went crazy, didn't know how to do anything, and was this corrupt leader. And you, depending on how you play the game, as either benevolent or corrupt leader or tyrant yourself, you basically save the day. Basically, long story short, if you play your cards right and you make enough money, you can save all of Albion by being filthy rich. Isn't that wonderful? So you do. The hero of Bright Wall eventually goes off after they defeat the darkness that's trying to kill everybody, and they disappear. Then there's this other game called Fable. It's not Fable 4. It's like a side game where you're playing with this boy named. You're playing with this boy by the name of Gabriel, and Gabriel is found by Teresa, and Teresa's like, the corruption is coming. We need you to be a hero and all this other stuff. And basically, long story short, a whole bunch of mess of things happen. But what you need to take away from this game is that he now becomes the new blind seer, and Teresa is destroyed by a wish. And that's where the Fable franchise ends, while Lionhead was the game creator at that time. So now that we're done talking about the Fable games and the history, so now that we talked about the history of Fable 1, 2, and 3, and the history of Albion as a whole, now we're going to talk about why you're all here, which is Fable 4 and the leaks. So, just like magic. Alright, kiddies, now let's talk about Fable 4, the leaks and the rumors that came out with this. Now, mind you, I ran into all this information when I was watching here, Eurogamer, their icon here, and their link will be in the video description. Like I said, I'm going to be busy working on this YouTube video. So, let's talk about this. So, in the new Fable 4 game that we saw on the Xbox Live event, I did a live reaction to it. Thumbnail here. You can go check out my live reaction. And it looks like the Fable world is going back to a more medieval setting, and this is what it says in the leaks. So, in this medieval setting, it's basically you're going to be doing time travel. And now Teresa is back, but now she's on another world, which is very interesting. So it gets fantasy slash sci-fi slash space fantasy kind of stuff going on, which sounds really cool. So I want to see how that plays out. Then also the Jack of Blades is now back, and people have been wanting him to come back for a while. And to be honest, though I've never played it, I kind of wanted him to come back too. And I'm kind of hoping, because you're going to get timey-wiminess, that maybe you get an opportunity to run into the Queen and the Jack of Blades. I mean, Queen and the Knight of Blades. Hopefully. Another thing that comes with this is that now, just like in the original games, you get an opportunity to, like, create your own village. Like, you get to create your own village. And the reason why you get to create your own village is because there was a king that came up. He was kind of evil. He made a new spire. He made a wish with it. And basically, he was like, hey, I want Albion to be destroyed, Brightwall, and all that other stuff using a comet. But then I want it to happen again years later, which is kind of bad. So maybe that's a part of the timey-wiminess, and maybe Teresa, because she sees it, because Teresa is able to see into all timelines. So maybe that's why she was able to make that wish to shore herself, because she knew she wasn't going to actually get destroyed. Don't know. But again, take this all with a giant grain of salt, because these are leaks and rumors and all that stuff. And apparently there was some video footage of this, but I can't show it to you because basically it's like there was a big, like, bright light on top of it, and there's no real way to confirm that this was legitimate gameplay for Fable 4. Another thing is that you can again choose to be male or female, but now you get to have a more in-depth character creator mode, because in the past you can be a male or female, but you were only one specific nationality. You couldn't be black, you couldn't be Asian, you couldn't be Spanish, you couldn't be Hindu, couldn't be Native American, you can only be Caucasian, which again is not a problem, but I like the fact that you can actually make someone who looks like you when you're playing the game. Just saying. So I'm excited about that. Another thing that they talked about is that within like the time travel and everything. Like I said, Teresa will be on another planet. What I'm kind of hoping that we get an opportunity to see in this new game is that I kind of want to see them bring back the Fable 1 kind of skill tree with the magic and fighting style. Like the way it was in the first Fable, the skill tree is like you were able to make your character really buff, you can make them really fast, or you can make them a really skilled magic user. And that was in the other two games as well, but not like in the first one. So I hope to see that return. I hope we get a dog again, but I kind of want to see a cat. So I don't know. I'm actually not a dog or a cat person. I just like animals. I would like to see a cat, or maybe if not a cat, maybe a really cool like crow or owl you get to fight with. I know I'm going to Harry Potter territory, but I would like to see you have a familiar, especially if you're a mage type character. I think that would be really cool. The other thing I'm kind of hoping to see, like I said before, is that maybe because of the timey-wiminess, we get to see we get to see the Knight and the Queen of Blades, and maybe you get to see your original character from Oakvale come back, or you get to see Scythe come back, because honestly, I hope he does come back, because again, you got to see so little of him in the first game. And if you don't know the full history of Albion, like you don't do your research, you'll never understand his true significance. And I mean, you do get stuff like when you read everything, you kind of find when you find the little notes and all, and the little diary entries, you find out stuff. But in this version, I hope you get to see more of him and just get to see what kind of a badass he is. And you bring back the sword of Aeons back and hear it whispering to you, and maybe you get the chance to use it this time. I think that would be really cool, because Fable has such a unique history. It had such a unique story system. The fact that you could be evil or good, because it was one of the first games to bring that up. And maybe, and just maybe this time, we get that goddamn acorn that we can turn into a tree. Hey, I've never played this game, but even I know about that crock of BS. Just saying. I'm looking at you, creator. You know who you are. It's right there. Look at him. Anywho, so with that all said, guys, I want to know, what are your thoughts and feelings on this? Are you excited that we're getting a Fable 4 and we're going back to a more medieval time and we're stepping away from the Industrial Revolution? Are you excited to see that there might be more magical creatures involved with this? Because remember on that teaser trailer, you get to see that fairy who gets eaten by a frog, poor baby. But still, are you excited about that? And then I'm wondering, will we get to see even more creatures? Because remember, in Fable Legends, you got to see more interesting creatures pop up. In that game, you saw fairies and stuff. Although there were pixies in the first game, but that's neither here nor there. So I'm curious to see, will they bring these these types of creatures back? And also, I'm wondering, with the character creator, will you have the opportunity to make characters more like in Fable Legends, where you can have a sword and shield, you could be more of an in-depth rogue, your magic is a little different, because in Fable Legends there was this ice girl, so will you be able to focus more on one specific willpower more than the others? Like, I'm very interested. And will Gabriel even come back, even though Teresa is back in his world? Are Gabriel and Teresa together, and is Gabriel the reason that Teresa is back? Like, I'm just very curious, because it leaves a lot of loose ends and it makes you question what this new game is going to be about. So I'm excited. I hope you're excited, and I hope you do me a favor, guys. Grant my wish by liking this video, subscribing to my channel, leaving me a comment in the comment section down below. And I want to grant you to grant me one more wish by washing your hands, wearing a mask, making good life choices, using gloves and sanitizer, remembering social distance, respecting and loving on everybody, because everyone deserves love and respect. Remember that all Black Lives Matter. I'm going to see you on the flip side, because you've been doing what I've been telling you to do this entire time, which is live, think, and dream big. It is my mantra, baby. I live by this. So, bye. Wink.